Good afternoon and welcome to the latest edition of our special sports show and our build up to the Olympic Games here on RCV Radio Sport Ireland, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb.ie. Obviously, there's an awful lot of Irish contingent at the Olympic Games in terms of athletes, but always Irish sporting fans, we do love the track and field events. We do love to cast our eyes on all the featured sprint events. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by an absolute legend of the track and field world in terms of female running and sprinting. What can I say about this lady? For almost a decade, she was ranked as the number one 400 meter women's world champion of all time, the best there was. 2012 Olympic Games world champion, Olympic medalist, 2009 world champion in Berlin, again then in 2008 in the Summer Olympics in Beijing, she bronze medals, a three-time Olympian. From 2005 to 2009, she was ranked the number one 400 meter sprinter in the world, the one and only Sanya Richards Ross. Sanya, you're 36. When you see Justin Gatlin at 39 trying to make the Olympics, was there ever sort of a feeling if the Olympics came maybe 2 or 3 years earlier in 2018 that you would have gone for one more time?
Hi, Jim. First of all, thanks for having me in that awesome introduction. Every time I go to the Olympic trials, I'm like, why didn't I come out here? Why didn't I train one more year? Because I see athletes like Justin Gatlin, Allison Felix still at it. But, you know, I love what I'm doing now. I feel very blessed to have a beautiful family, to be able to be at these meets, commentating and get back to the sport in that way feels very special to me. So it's okay. I'm moving on. I'm okay with my retirement.
And Sanya, I suppose heading into these Olympics now in Tokyo, we're probably a year behind. But for everyone, it almost feels like a new dawn, a sort of a new age. All the sort of familiar faces that we're so used to for the last 2 decades, they've all sort of slowly but silently sort of disappeared or gradually. So we're heading into a new track and field where if you're not really following the sport closely in terms of little is known, there's some real talent here in terms of this Olympic Games. But these are all guys yet to have those Olympic medals in their resume. Is that a fair assessment in terms of?
Absolutely. You're right. There's always this kind of changing of the guard in our sport. And I think it's definitely happening right now with so many young superstars who seem to be ready to take it to another level. And it's just really exciting to see, especially so many of the young Americans that I've been able to watch closely develop through the high school ranks, college ranks, and now, you know, at the world stage and at the Olympics for the first time.
Sanya, we'll get right into it. And I suppose as we have a woman guest, we'll get into the women's side first. The women's 100 meters, Sanya, and obviously, some events, the names are new, but some of these names are very familiar here. I suppose the four that spring to mind: Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, numerous time Olympian; Elaine Thompson, numerous time Olympian; the British Big Hope, Dina Asher-Smith, and then Shericka Jackson. Are these the main contenders for the gold medal in the women's 100 meters, or is there anyone else I'm leaving out of that list?
No, you're absolutely right. Those would be the women who I would keep my eyes on, as well as Blessing Okabari. Blessing Okabari, who competes for Nigeria, is having the year of her life. She's, I want to say 36 or maybe 34, somewhere in there. She was competing when I competed, but she also is running well, and she's also been to many championships. So she's someone who we should look out for. But Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is the number one person to keep our eyes on. She looks better than she ever has, which is crazy when you think about this will be her 4th Olympics. She's a mom now, and, you know, she's 35 years old, but, you know, I think that she could potentially win another Olympic gold medal, and what a great way to end her illustrious career.
And just on that event, Sanya, I suppose the British public, the English public, have an awful lot of expectation on Dina Asher-Smith. She's going there as one of their main sort of hopes in the track and field of medaling. Would it be a major disappointment for her if she didn't finish within the medals, given the amount of expectation that's resting on her sort of shoulders? She seems to be the main British hope in both, I would say, men and female. She seems to be the leading candidate.
No, you're absolutely right. Dina Asher-Smith is someone who I think could medal in the 100 and specifically in the 200. I think her better chance at a medal is in the 200. And I hope she won't feel tremendous disappointment if she doesn't leave with a medal in the Olympic Games. I know how tough that can be to carry the weight of your country on your shoulders. And she does it with such grace and dignity and class. And I just truly admire her. But she has a big shot, and I hope she will get a medal in the 100 and 200, but I look out for her more in her specialty event, which I think is, she's a world champion in the 200 meters. She really gets it right there. So we'll see if she can keep pace with the quick sprinter, the short sprinters, as well as medal in the 200 as well.
And Sanya, you mentioned the 200, and I suppose there's a few more names in the 200. While the 100 meters, you could probably name 4 to 5. In the 200 meters, you probably have to, the names that we mentioned already, but you also have to add the likes of Gabby Thomas to that list, Shauna Miller to that list. And obviously, then you cannot forget, I know she's aging, but if Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is a contender at 35, I'm sure Daphne Schiffner would also consider herself to be a contender given her resume in the 200 as well. So you're probably looking at 6 or 7, and you're probably looking at the field. If you're saying all 8 that could probably take the track on the final for the 200 meters, all you would imagine, if they avoid each other in the heats for the semi-final, could potentially medal.
Yeah, the women's 200 is going to be one of the hottest sprint races in Tokyo. It is phenomenal, the talent that we see there. Gabby Thomas, who ran the second fastest time ever by a woman in the event, 21:61 at the Olympic trials, is on fire. Of course, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, who, especially she comes off of a big win in the 100, will have so much momentum and has run her first sub 22, 21:79. And like you said, Dina Asher-Smith, we throw in Daphne. There's just so many women. It's like they could all be under 22 in the 200, which has never happened before. And so if I'm going to be eyeing one race that I'm most looking forward to in Tokyo, it's going to be the women's 200 meters.
And the women's 200 meters, you mentioned there, it's got the evidence that we could be talking about a photo finish here in this sort of race. Heads, basically knees, just
yes. No, for sure. And we've seen that right in the women's 400 where we see Shauna Miller-Weibo like actually dive, for the finish line. And, you do whatever it takes when it comes down to the final 5 meters. So this will for sure be one of those potential photo finish races, and I can't wait for it.
And if I can flip over to the men's now, in terms of the men's 100 meters, and obviously all the talk back maybe a year ago, maybe in January, was the talk, well, Usain Bolt is not around, this is Justin Gatlin's chance, and then disaster for Justin Gatlin at the US trials, pulling his hamstring. Tyson Gay also, we just said, a big contender, also missing out in terms of the Olympics as well. So you're looking at the field there in terms, Christian Coleman absent as well. So this is really, really open. I suppose the only one that you would say that has an Olympic gold medal or is experienced in that is Andre de Grasse. He is a sort of champion, but Johan Blake is sometimes around the turf, but Johan's getting on. So Tyrone Bramall, Ronnie Baker, Ferd Curley, these are the names they're mentioning, but is de Grasse experience, is that going to count?
It will count for sure, but this is the first time since the end of the Usain Bolt era that we've seen the men's 100-meter top list dominated by US sprinters. And so they truly have a chance to stand on top of the podium. Trayvon Bramall, who has an incredible story, tore his Achilles 5 years ago, really hard to come back from an Achilles tear, especially as a sprinter, has rebounded so well. Before his Achilles tear, he looked like what we thought Christian Coleman was for Team USA. And he had to really fight back to be the #1 male sprinter in the world right now with 9:77. And so he's definitely the favorite going in. He suffered his only loss of the season right after the trials, but I think that's a good thing. I think sometimes you get one loss, it takes that pressure off of being undefeated and just makes you feel you okay, you know what it's like to lose. Now let's get back to the top of that podium. So, Trayvon goes in as the heavy favorite. DeGrasse will be in the mix. He has a phenomenal final 50 meters. He's a great 200-meter runner. So we'll see what he can do. But the Americans have a chance to do something really special, in Tokyo in the men's 100.
And I suppose, Sanya, if you bring it on to the 200, and I know there's a few names here in terms of contention, but the standout favorite has to be Noah Lyles going into it. I suppose it'd be a major shock if Noah didn't medal, but anything but a gold, Noah would probably see as a disappointment.
Yeah, Noah would definitely be disappointed if he didn't win gold at the Olympics. I know I've spoken to him personally, and he loves to compete. He wants to be the face of the sport. He, admires what Usain Bolt has done to be able to make track and field so popular. And so he wants to do that. So I think it's gold for him, or bust almost, which I think for most of us it is. When I went to the Olympics, all I wanted was the gold medal as well. So, Noah Lyles has talked a lot about the pressure, about dealing with some depression and all of those things. So he went to the trials, he was able to win. So I think his confidence should be back high. But, the other person I would be afraid of in this race is Andre DeGrasse, just because of his experience. And he's kind of been rounding into shape at the perfect time. So, I think he would be someone to look out for. And then, of course, the other Americans who are in this field as well.
And you mentioned other Americans, and there's a young 19-year-old there. Everyone starts to talking him about late Arian Knighton
Yes.
in terms of his ability. He's sort of a new kid that sort of bust on the blocks. It seemed to be he's just coming of age really at the right time heading into the Olympics. But also as well, Adam Jamili is an experienced sprinter in the 200s as well. And no doubt he'll have ambitions maybe to sneak a medal, maybe break up the American or Canadian contingent for the three as well.
Yes, Adam Jamili is a phenomenal contender, has been to many majors, has won on relays, has won medals. And so it'd be nice to see him to be able to stand on the podium as he's looking towards the end of his career as well. So we'll see what he's able to do there. And I do think experience pays off big at major championships, and he has that in spades.
And Sanya, we'll move on now to the more longer distance. I suppose we come on to the 800 meters women, and everybody's talking about Atin Mew. She seems to be the phenomenon. She seems to be the Usain Bolt of women's running at the moment in terms of everyone's talking about her. So it would be a shock. I think she has only lost one race as well this year, if I'm not mistaken. But herself and I suppose Heidi Lynn from Norway will pose a challenge. Halimi Nakai, the Ugandan, will pose a challenge. But I suppose, again, like Noah Lyles, this is Atin Mew's to lose.
Yes, I think Mo is, I haven't seen anybody like her in so long. Gerald Miles Clark is an American who did the 400 and 800, but I think Mo, the potential she has is unlimited. And I'm so excited. I was hoping she would run the 400 at the Olympics because she really could have done either one and potentially stood on top of that podium. But I remember talking to her before the Olympic trials, and she said, the 800 called me, and that's my baby. So I'm headed back up there. The 800 said it missed her. And so, I'm excited when you're so young. There's a benefit to being young and naive and not having the pressure and never having been there before that I think can also pay off big time. And the way she's handled her college career, handled everything that's happened with signing this huge Nike contract and just everything, she just handled it all in stride. And I think that she'll do the same thing at the Olympics.
And in terms of the men's event, I'm most massive shock, a blockbuster shock. Donovan Brazier not going to the Olympics, the 2019 world's fastest man. I suppose one of the hot favorites. It was people deemed a formality. If he turned up, he was going to win gold. Clayton Murphy won the US trials. Has that really opened the door now? Is this blown it wide open in the 800 meters men? Can we expect anyone really to medal? Is the Americans not really guaranteed the gold medal here in this event anymore?
Exactly. We were all stunned when Donovan Brazier finished last in the 800 at the Olympic trials. And I got a chance to visit with him afterwards, and he was actually dealing with an injury. And he just didn't want to say anything because obviously when his competitors would have known, it would have made him more vulnerable. But he had a really severe foot injury. He was actually in a cast after the 800 as he was watching the rest of the Olympic trials from the stands. And he was in good spirits and feels like, there's still a lot to be done in his career, but him out of the picture certainly makes the 800 much more open. And Clayton Murphy, who won for Team USA, who, I think is someone who always kind of has that chip on his shoulder. He has tremendous talent, always a great finisher, could be someone who could potentially take this. But obviously, Nigel Amos, who has been in this event for many years and has tons of experience and career, all of these guys, are going to give him a tough challenge. So excited to see how the 800 will play out in Tokyo.
And I suppose, dare I say, it would be forgettable to do your specialty, your event, the 400 meters in terms of women and men. I'm just going to turn it over to you in terms of the women's side of things. You could probably give me a certainty of 1, 2, and 3, but in terms of you to pick maybe 4 to 5 names in terms of the women, who do you think they will be in terms of who in contention?
Yeah, well, at this point, the 400 women is actually pretty open. Shawnee Miller-Weibo, I think, is entered in both. She was leaning so much towards running just the 200 before, but she has such a great shot to be Olympic champ again. It would be great to see her in the 400. Stephanie McPherson of Team Jamaica, who's always been there. Quinera Hayes, who looked phenomenal. And I talked to her coach about how her training is going. I think she is in great shape and ready to run fast at the Olympics. Allison Felix, who you can't ever count Allison out. I mean, she was in 5th place.
Phenomenal. It's a 5th
coming
time
off the turn. Yes.
5th time Olympian. Wow. So she made her first Olympics there as in 1992, was it? In terms of, no, in terms of the 5 Olympics,
her first one was 2004 in Athens.
2004 in Athens, yeah.
2004 in Athens was her first games. We went to our first games together, and she went on to make Rio and now Tokyo, and it's her 5th games. And it's just like I said, if she's in the final, she's on the podium. I just don't see Allison not being in the top 3 as long as her body holds up and she makes to the final. So the women's 400 will be exciting. There'll be a couple American contenders. Jamaica will be in the mix. And of course, if Shawnee Miller-Weibo chooses to do it, the Bahamas may have a chance to have a double Olympic champion in the event, because she won it obviously in 2016.
And what's your thoughts on the men's 400?
Well, on the men's side, we have Team USA's, why is his name slipping my mind all of a sudden? Michael Norman, of course, Michael Norman of Team USA, who will have a lot to run for. His mom is actually from Japan, and he's been talking since he was in college about the opportunity to go there and represent Team USA and also represent his mom there. So excited to see him compete. Randolph Ross, who was Team USA, who was also made the team NCAA champion. Not a lot of the NCAA champions were able to hold on, and he did, and he made the team. So I think that he will be fantastic there. There's some names that we will not forget, like Stephen Gardner, who is phenomenal. It's going to be sad that Wade Van Niekerk can't be there, because world record holder.
Yeah, the last one was sensational.
Yes, it was sensational. And so, Isaac Makwala, who is another great athlete to watch. He's one of those guys who really goes for it, will get out really fast and will hold on and finish strong. So I would say this is Michael Norman's race to lose if he can stay focused and in the moment and not get distracted by everything that's going on. I think that he can leave Tokyo with an Olympic gold medal in the 400 and potentially the 4x4 as well.
And I suppose we get on to the long distance. And I know in terms of sprinters, they're great. They love the short distance, but they love the long distance as well. And I suppose there are always events that have been dominated by the Kenyans and the Ethiopians as such, and the Moroccans and Algerians. But we've seen over the past maybe Australian sprinters coming to the fore. And Lyndon Hall is mentioned very highly in terms of the 1500 meters there, and I suppose Faith Kipyegon. But the Kenyans and the Algerians and the Ethiopians, they seem to have a dominance in terms of these events.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jim. And, I don't cover the distance races as much, so I don't do as much research and dive as deeply into these. But obviously, as a fan of track and field, it's been amazing to see what the Kenyan athletes have been able to do in this event, and to continue to see if they'll be the ones that are most dominant. But, I forgive me for not knowing this event as closely as I do the sprints, because that's where I spend a lot of my time talking to the athletes and analyzing those events.
And Sanya, no bother, we'll just touch on other things. When you see Olympians, and obviously you've been in the past the games, when you see what the accomplishments of Mo Farah, when you see the accomplishments of David Rudisha and these sorts of guys, is there a mutual respect between short distance sprinters and long distance sprinters? When people say to you, Hikam El Garouj and Gabriel Selassie and all those, are those sorts of names revered in terms of short-term sprinting as well?
Absolutely. So much respect for distance runners, field eventers. Like, when you're on a team, you see the effort and the hard work that these athletes put in every single day. And that's what I love so much about being a part of a college team, was that I got to learn and see like what it took to be the best miler and the best shot putter, and the kind of discipline and dedication that they put into the sport. So when I tell you, I have so much respect for these athletes and what they've been able to accomplish, and the kinds of discipline that it takes for them to be great. So yes, 100%, a lot of mutual discipline for sure.
And Sanya,
mutual respect.
Mutual respect. Sanya, we've seen in the past Olympic Games where mainly one world record might go per event starting. Do you think maybe in this Olympic Games are any of Bolt's records, or is Wade Van Niekerk's record that he took Michael Johnson? Is there anyone's sort of Olympic record or long standing that might go? Will the 100 meters, will anyone get near that sort of time in the men or the women's?
I don't think that the women's 100 or the men's 100 records will go at this Olympics, but I certainly think the 400 hurdle records for men and women are both in danger. Obviously, Sydney McLaughlin already broke it at the Olympic trials, and I think that she could potentially go even faster at the Olympics. And with Rai Benjamin, and obviously already the 400 meter hurdle record already going down by one of my favorite athletes to watch compete. He is just so incredible to see them line up together. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. And so I think those records, Carson Warholm of Norway. And so I think that the women and men's 400 meter hurdle records will be in danger. And the shot put, right? We saw the shot put world record also go down at the Olympic trials. So anything is possible. And I just have to quickly say how amazing it is and how resilient these athletes have been. I thought the performances would take a dip after losing 2020 and not having the competitive season. I didn't think athletes would be running faster than they ever ran before, but wow, it just goes to show, how we are as a people, not just athletes, but as a people, how resilient we are. And I'm just so proud to be associated with the sport.
And Sanya, I know throughout your career, maybe starting off in the earlier years, you would have ran to maybe events maybe where there was small enough sort of crowds, pocket sort of crowds. But obviously when you get to a major international tournament like the World Championships, like the Olympics, you're talking 20, 30, 40,000 in a sort of stadium. When you walk out, you feel that sort of buzz, that adrenaline gets going. Even before you step out in the stadium, you're already psyched and pumped. Is to focus on a race where there mightn't be the vocal support of the American sort of crowd or the British sort of crowd. Obviously, there will be Japanese people there in residence. How much are the athletes reliant on maybe their teammates coming and supporting them and creating that sort of noise in the sort of stands, or just creating that sort of buzz? Because I almost feel like, especially in sprints, athletes sort of feed off that sort of the buzz. If it's silent, there's a danger that the concentration might slip or something may go wrong.
Yeah, I really feel for the athletes because I think what made the Olympics so very special is having fans in the stands, having your family there, people from all over the world who love what you do. They're supporting you. And to imagine that the stands could possibly be completely empty or very minimal people in the stands, I think is just really difficult on the athletes to be able to really get yourself up to give your best performance. But ultimately, I think this is the best alternative. You know, I think athletes are so appreciative to be able to have an Olympics after not having one last year that, you know, I think that they'll have to look past the things that they have no control over and really just focus in on what they've been working for now 5 years to be able to have this opportunity. And so it'll be different for sure. But I think that most of them are preparing themselves mentally and physically for what it's going to take for them to give their very best without physical people in the stands.
And Sonia, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but psychologically, being in a race of a big major tournament where someone, say, false starts or something like that, and the sort of crowd, it was in case of someone false starting in a race, what sort of effect does it have on the mindset of a sprinter in terms of their whole sort of preparation, the whole sort of cycle and the routine? Do you almost need to take maybe a minute, 2 minutes just to clear your head? Because obviously when someone false starts, it affects everyone on the sort of blocks. It just doesn't really affect just that one person, because the next time around we all see someone else false start because
Yeah.
someone had false started the previous time.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's really hard because when there's a lapse in focus, like you said, if one person falls start, it affects everybody. And so I think that they'll have to be even more disciplined than they were before about really tuning in and being focused. I think not having people in the stands almost makes the Olympics feel like practice, which I think is so difficult because it's not practice. It's the biggest race of your life. And so you're going to have to dig deep to be able to pull the best out of yourself, even though you're not going to be in what you expected in your mind's eye. This, 50,000 people screaming for you, cheering, the noise, and just all of those amazing things that we all dream of being able to do at the Olympic Games and beyond. So I think it's going to take, yes, a minute or two for athletes to kind of regroup, refocus, remember that this is the Olympic finals. This is what it all comes down to. This is what they've been working for all their lives. And now it's time to step up and bring their best performance to the track.
And I suppose, Sonia, it never really happened to you in terms of this epidemic, but do you almost sort of feel for the athletes in terms of their preparation in between races, in terms of you might go through the opening rounds, but obviously in your day when you were competing in the Olympic Games, it wasn't a bother if you wanted to go down the following day and maybe work on something or work on a certain areas. There could have been so many sorts of people. This Olympics now, everything is probably timed to where you can and go because there's not interaction in terms of COVID. So in terms of preparation in between sort of rounds and sort of stuff like that, in terms of recovery, in terms of areas that athletes want to work on, is that going to be so sort of difficult really? Because once your race is over, you're almost consigned to your quarters, that domain, until your sort of next race. So if there's areas that you want to really push on, unless you guarantee that sort of quality time to get that space, you're probably not going to get the amount of time you feel you need really.
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult because, like you said, they're going to have the athletes truly quarantined. Even the experience we used to have of being able to go to a country and get out of the Olympic Village for a little bit so that you can, get some of that stress and pressure off of like always feeling like you're on and it's always at the Olympics. The athletes won't have that reprieve. Like you mentioned, in between races, everything will be so strict for the athletes as far as who can be in the ice baths and who can be around this person. Just everything is going to be so much more difficult and so much more structured. And so, yes, those are going to be more challenges they'll have to overcome. But like I said, when I talk to the athletes about the Olympics, the majority of them are just so grateful and so happy that it's happening that, they're just kind of leaving all of those things to say, hey, every one of us have to deal with that. And so I want to be the best when I'm on the track, no matter the circumstances around it.
And Sanya, for you, what would be the sort of fairy tale stories of these Olympics in terms of the sprint event? Would it be Alison Felix to medal? Would that be one of the big fairy tale stories for Alison to maybe go out on her final Olympics with a sort of medal? And in terms of what sort of stories that we could have in terms of emerging sort of superstars? Is this the time when Noah Lyles puts his name in lights, really, in terms of the world name? He's known throughout America and Canada, but is this where he becomes a global name in terms of Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, England, Europe, where he's known throughout the world in terms of that popularity and casting that shadow of Usain Bolt in terms of sprints, in terms of his legacy truly defined as in the past? And is this Noah Lyles' time?
Yeah, I think for me, the fairy tale stories and fairy tale endings of these Olympic Games would be both Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce and Allyson Felix finishing their career on a high note. I think Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce can do that in the 100. Allyson certainly has a shot in the 400, and if not, for sure in that 4x4, the final time we might see her on the track there. To see her leave with a gold medal would be absolutely amazing, to just solidify them both as two of the greatest female track and field athletes of our time and possibly ever. And so I'm looking forward to seeing them do that. I think for Athing Mu, I think to see her potentially win her the first time she's at an Olympics to win a gold medal, I think that will be a beautiful story, because I believe she'll have a very long and illustrious career. And so I'd love to see her also stand on top of the podium. And on the men's side, Trayvon Bromell and Noah Lyles, absolutely. Trayvon's story touches so many people of never giving up, of just continuing to chase your dreams. Many people counted Trayvon Bromell out, and here he is, the fastest man in the world. And Noah Lyles, who also a young prodigy who we've seen coming up right in front of our faces, who hasn't shied away from what it means to be the world number one, what it means to have the pressure of being the face of track and field. To see him stand on top of the podium and win a gold medal too, I think those two stories would be also fairy tale endings for those athletes as well. So I hope we get to write those for them and to share them with many people across the world. And I do hope that they become household names. Some of them already are, but for Noah Lyles and Trayvon Bromell, it would be an amazing opportunity for those two names to start to ring and to resonate around the world.
And Sanya, lastly, it's in terms of my final question for you in this interview. And I suppose we have to recap on that night where you became Olympic gold medalist, a 400 meter, to do Olympic medal following on from a world championship. Can you just describe that feeling when you cross that line afterwards? Is your body sort of so run up that your mind, you're not really thinking, you're not sort of racing? And the second part then, obviously, what would you say to all the fans here in Ireland that would have followed your career and have seen you in numerous Olympic Games? Well, I just want to know what that feeling is like after going through a 4 or 5 year cycle. Maybe that was for you, 2012. It was your third Olympics. So to become an Olympic champion after going through 2 previous Olympics, what was that sensation? What's the aftermath, those 8 hours after when you become an Olympic champion? Are they crazy altogether?
Absolutely. It's impossible to describe what it's like to have a dream when you're 9 years old, to be an Olympic champion, to finally run into that fairy tale ending and to live your dream. You know, people say your life flashes before your eyes, and it certainly feels like that when you stand on the podium and the national anthem is being played in your honor, and you think about all the sacrifices, the injuries, the coaches, the people, the places, just all of the things that allowed you to live this moment that you've wanted so desperately for so long. And especially for me, after disappointment in 2008, when I felt like I should have been the Olympic champion, I could have been the Olympic champion, it didn't work out for me. You know, it felt like, and you never know if it's going to happen again, if you'll get a chance to go back to the Olympics. And so just a lot of feelings of feeling blessed and relieved and accomplished, and, you know, like you can do anything. And it is a whirlwind the couple hours after, because you go to the medal stand, you go do interviews, your family, it's like all of these great things. And it's just the best feeling in the world. And, you know, I look forward to seeing that for so many other people, having those experiences in a few weeks. And I do want to thank all the fans in Ireland who support track and field, who have followed me and encouraged me. I get emails and I get written notes from people in Ireland for autographs all the time. And I can't thank you guys enough for that love and support. And, I hope that you guys will really enjoy these 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo, because they're going to be really, really special. And yeah, it's just been a wonderful journey, wonderful experience. I've really enjoyed catching up with you, Jim, and thank you for an opportunity to share a little bit of my story as well as some of my picks going into this Olympic Games.
Sanya, the pleasure has been all mine, speaking to one of the greatest women sprinters of all time. As we said, the fastest in the world for almost a decade, world #1. Sanya, thanks for sharing your time here with us on RCB Radio Sport Ireland, previewing the track and field events, the short distance sprints events in the Olympics. We're sure to be looking out. No doubt many people are going to their bookies after hearing this interview and saying, well, Sanya Richards Ross told me who the 100 meters the champion was going to be and who the 400 meters champion is going to be. So you might get a few more letters in the post. There might be compliment letters or there might be complaint letters, but hopefully they're compliments anyway. Sanya, an absolute pleasure, and no doubt we are hoping for a great Olympic Games. Sanya Richards Ross, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.